jacked up review show. It's a jacked up review show. Jacked up review show. It's a jacked up review show.
Join us as we cover many an insane movie and numerous cult TV phenomenons. Are you ready to get jacked up? Are you with us? Then listen on.
Listener discretion is advised. It's a jacked up review show. It's a jacked up review show. Jacked up review show. It's a jacked up review show. It's a jacked up review show. Jacked up review show.
And we're back with another exclusive. I got Munson at the Movies, recurring guest, Cori Wallace. How are you?
I'm good, Cam. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for making this episode. We were just thinking, what other actor, could conquer next? And it's like, yeah, let's just do one of those everyday people who lately, everyone's been kind of picking on him because he's got unusual things. I'll just kind of start out this intro. This actor, John Cusack, has just always been one of those who's just popped up in the most unusual things. And yeah, both he and Ethan Hawke were interviewed around 2013, 2014, because they were both like in 2 hit movies, 2 worst of the year movies, and they just talked about how it's kind of a gamble. Just you have to do 2 movies that you don't want to do in order to do 2 movies that you do want to do. And with Ethan Hawke in that same interview, he was talking about he had to do this awful action, just lifeless action movie with Selena Gomez in order to do Boyhood. So it's like, okay. And so there you go. It's just a matter of pick your battles. And Cusack's been interesting because he's been doing a lot of live Q&As recently about screenings of Say Anything.
Yeah.
And I know he's pretty expensive at conventions, needlessly so, but I know if there's anything I know, one of his most popular movies is Con Air, and he does not want to ever talk about that movie because he hated working on it. So it's just one of those very unusual. It's like, damn. He's kind of, when I see him picking villain roles or just quirky comedy, I think what separates him from just another Tom Hanks or even picking stuff that Julia Roberts would have picked, that are date comedies and everything. What makes him different, I think, in that is that he kind of just goes for, he's got a family of brothers and sisters who are in this industry. So I think he just kind of brings out that whole, big brother, just, either clueless or feeling like he's not in control of something and just kind of giving the viewer that feel of, oh shit, something's about to hit the fan.
Yes. Like impending dread, but it's going to be funny, interesting to watch for sure. I definitely feel like that.
You're either going to root for or against him. It really all depends.
Yes. Yes, for sure. We'll talk about him as like the antagonist protagonist, and how he's played contrarians and kind of like, I don't want to call him a rebel because I don't want to give him that much credit in some of these roles, but there's certainly rebellious figures. And so we'll talk about that theme today because that's kind of like a touch of John Cusack in every single role he plays, just kind of like the outsider's insider.
Exactly. And I mean, that's with any actor, even the best of the best, like Denzel or someone are going to eventually have a little bit of moments like, I kind of see you from that other role in here, or, something like that. Is like, not saying you're a good or a bad actor, but it's kind of the same thing with how some of these amazing TV stars who have sort of just played variations of the same role. It's not necessarily that their talent is limited, but even if it is, we kind of like seeing them as that kind of role.
Yes.
So
It's comforting to us. It's familiar, and that we know that's why they're still getting cast. I mean, if you look at like John Cusack's listings, his IMDb listing has 88 credits on it. Now, and I know he started when he was like 15, 16 years old.
yeah,
He started stage even before that because he came from an artistic family. They were
Extremely
doing
young.
things in Chicago before, but that's insane. 88 credits, that's insane. 88 film credits. There is very, very few people that you could say have pulled together 88 named credits on their IMDb credit page.
I don't
That's
know.
unbelievable.
I think you could get up to 400, 200.
Yeah.
But maybe I'm just going by Eric Roberts' logic of not turning down anything now. I don't know. How did you introduce yourself to him? I mean, I know before we started the program, you were saying, you just kind of were a program guide specialist, so to speak,
Yeah.
and you would just kind of float around and then say, yeah, well, I'll check this out. I'm not sure about that.
Well, for this particular actor, I think the first time I ever really, so I was born in 77. So I went through like adolescence in the late 80s, early 90s. And there was a movie that was super quotable and almost, if it were to come out today, it would be totally like meme city. And it's the John Cusack film called Better Off Dead.
Oh, God. Yes.
And if you are, and kids in the 80s used to watch movies by this guy, Savage Steve Holland, and that's literally his credited director name. Savage Steve Holland was this guy who wrote these kind of like John Cusack with an edge style films. He wrote and directed Better Off Dead. He also did Getting Into College, or what's that? It has Corey, what's his face in it?
Oh, God.
Boyle.
Looking up. These savages. Oh, he did One Crazy Summer with Cusack. Okay. How I got into college.
Yeah. So he did these kind of like edgy John Cusack coming of age films. Anyway, so Better Off Dead is so campy, so ridiculous. It's the story of John Cusack's character, and he's kind of the straight man surrounded by crazy people, and it is hysterical. It's funny. I mean, if you got to know anything about this film, Curtis Armstrong's in it, so Booker's in it, and it's quotable. It came out in 1985, which was the heart of kind of like the teenage sex comedy era. Like it was like Porky's, those types of really popular. And I think Better Off Dead for a more edgy kid was really appealing. So that was where I first met John Cusack, is he was the young guy in Better Off Dead who was kind of like figuring out how to exist amongst all these crazy people.
Yeah, it's got Diane Franklin from Bill and Ted 2, and but yeah, I saw this in high school, and not 80s high school. I mean, in the 2000s, it drove me crazy. But I gotta say, it's definitely well casted. He definitely is kind of the perfect. He has a lot of subtle stuff in this, and I think that he plays that to perfection here. And everybody here, is aware of just how goofball this movie is. Even though it's PG, it's still tame even by PG 80s standards. And basically,
it's PG. It's PG, really?
Should be.
I guess there's no nudity in it. There's no nudity.
It's just because it's kind of a live action Looney Tunes cartoon. PG-13. It's one of those, it's just.
Yeah.
But yeah, there are some other moments where it's like, yeah, that probably gets killed from any cable TV viewing. And see, that's the other weird thing. I don't think I've seen it on any cable TV viewing, save for like occasional movie channel airings like Stars or HBO. But that's it.
It could run on like USA. It used to be like, I'm sure, like a USA Up All Night staple. You know what I mean?
It had to be, yeah.
What about you? Like, when were you first introduced to him?
That's the weird part. That was definitely one of the many movies I saw him in. So yeah, there was Con Air. There was a few of his other collaborations with Tim Robbins, Thin Red Line,
Yeah.
and eventually, movie channels would show stuff like City Hall, which is a political thriller, and
Yes.
the immortal hitman comedy that is, Grosse Point Blank. So I kind of just he's done enough diverse stuff to where it's like it was really easy to come across him, and that this is years before he teams up with Charlie Kaufman and all these other guys. But High Fidelity is definitely another one. I guess that would be number 2 pick. Because I know some people don't like that movie, but I think even though it's a romantic comedy or anything, it's it's hardly just a chick flick, and it's hardly just even just a unlikable slacker comedy. I mean, Stephen Frears, the great UK director, I think this movie is just on fire. And I know some people have in recent times even said, "Oh, it's not anything like this book that it's based on." It's like, who cares? It's just it's got to be its own thing. And this is also one of many collaborations he does with comedic actor Jack Black. And
Yes.
I find it easy to get into movie, and that says a lot because there were plenty of 2000s era films that instantly did not date well, either because of music or just if you hadn't seen it by 05, then what's the point? And unfortunately, I'm unfortunately a millennial, but I had to deal with so many other people. It's like unless it was like hip, like from as far back as 97, oh, uncool dude, and I was the kind of guy, my parents would introduce me to stuff from earlier generations because that's what they grew up with. And so I was just always just like, know what someone is known for as well as what they're good at. That's kind of always been my shtick. And like Roger Christian, for instance, might be an infamous director of a few different movies, but he was better known as an award-winning set designer and everything. So, and Cusack, I think, I think this was just a very natural movie for him to dive into because he'd already done some nutty stuff like the earlier pick, and so this one I think kind of just really resonated well.
Yeah, I will tell you that if you look at that movie and you look at how it was cast, so I'm trying to see if he got a producer's credit on this, because if you look at the people cast in this film, it's a lot of his friends.
Absolutely.
I mean, his sister's in it. Tim Robbins is in it.
Co-writer too.
Is in it. Natasha Gregson Wagner's in it. They've been friends for a long time. Yeah. And I think about like how he created this whole environment with Stephen Frears, who's a genius.
He's a writer too.
He's a great writer. And DVD Vincentis, who John Cusack has collaborated with a lot. Also was the co-writer of this film. And so he like crafted this world in Chicago that was taken and adapted from the Nick Hornby book. I actually really like this film too. I think it's faster paced than I thought it would be. There are a lot of surprises in this film. There's a lot of like, I don't want to say like cheesy movie magic, but there's a lot of moments that you're not expecting. And the way that they're kind of rolled out for you is like, this is watchable. Like I am enjoying myself.
And you can tell they put some thought into the gags. At one point, they imagine beating up this customer who is just, being very abusive to him in the record store. And you don't expect that in a, movie where the guy is trying to get the girl and he's got all these other colorful, coworkers. No,
Yes.
And, some of the guys are clearly, horny and over the top and definitely not PC by today's standards, but they're not to the point where you're like, I just want this douchebag off the screen,
Exactly.
either.
Yes, they're all likable figures. And I think there's a lot of people who don't get that this film is supposed to be, its own little world.
Pretty loopy.
Absolutely. And over the top characters. But you know what? John Cusack's really good at playing in those roles. Like, there's a movie that I think I don't even like Grosse Point Blank is a good example
There
of
we
like
go. Perfect segue.
existing in like this nutty, crazy environment with really strong tension there and a lot of stakes,
Sort of the
emotional
movie.
and funny stakes. And
Yes.
somehow he like navigates it and makes it accessible, believable.
Kind of the movie that basically reminds everyone, hey, guess what? I was doing dark comedies back when I first started. I can
That's
still do
right.
it.
As a teenager, I was doing dark comedies. Yeah.
Yeah, and Minnie Driver's really great here. Dan Aykroyd is very, you've never seen him play a bad guy, and so
Yeah.
I think, don't ever watch it on TV. They absolutely massacre it to where just none of anything is funny. So you do have to watch it uncut and just take it for what it is. Just a very fun escapade. There was an unofficial sequel to this called War Inc. I do not recommend that one, but kind of loosely continuing this assassin role. But that's the other thing. Even though it's about a hitman, I mean, you rarely see him killing. It's really only just the guys who are trying to kill him that he gets the gunplay. For the most part, it's him just kind of going into everyday situation, and you would never even think that he is, a contract killer. And so I think that angle was what made it work better. It's got Tarantino moments, but it also mixes in kind of like Rummy and Michelle's high school reunion type tropes, like from that same year, where it's like this guy's, coming across people he once knew.
Yes.
They're getting caught in the whole dealio, and it was a good thing back then, because then it was just cool to see that, okay, Hollywood for lack of a better word, it was just showing is like, okay, we don't have to just be doing knockoffs of Tarantino, Coen Brothers. We can actually be our own thing. We can kind of like Boondock Saints, Yeah, there's some inspiration, but it's still its own deal. It can stand on its own 2 feet.
Well, and people, I think the Grosse Point Blank is one of the last films. I mean, they stopped doing this in the 2000s, where it was a full experience, meaning you could be a college student in 1998 and have a poster on your wall, be listening to the soundtrack, have seen the movie like multiple times. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it does have a good soundtrack.
It has a great soundtrack, and people who like want a really eclectic, who want to sound really cool and sophisticated, they just need to pull this out. This movie honestly makes me a little sad, because the chemistry here between Cusack and his old friend Jeremy Piven is outstanding. It's hysterical. It's believable because it's real. And these two men have been friends since they were literally like, preteen adolescents.
Yeah. And this is years before we found out Piven was, misbehaving in real life.
Yes.
Kind of.
And radioactive. But they're excellent performers together. Minnie Driver, this is when she was still hot, and she does great work in this. Alan Arkin is phenomenal in this as the psychologist.
Yeah, I'm trying to pick your brain.
Yeah, it's just it's hysterical, and it's also very dry humor. It's not like John Cusack doesn't do well with slapstick, but he doesn't do, but somehow he makes like visual sight gags even look like dry, wry, dark humor. There's a lot of visual sight gags in Grosse Point Blank, like when they blow up the mini mart, or when they wrap the guy up in the banner, like the homecoming banner, and drag him down the stairs. Those are visual sight gags that with anybody else would look cheesy, but they just really work with him.
Right. Absolutely. I think, and it's weird how I don't see it mentioned as much, even though many people have seen a bit or at least heard of it, and it's perplexing to me. And overall, I mean, it's been interesting how in recent years he's kind of just been part of the all-star cast of movies, and co-starred a lot with Nick Cage, and he's had a few misses. Like, I didn't understand his casting as Richard Nixon in The Butler, but
Yeah.
I didn't think that was a bad movie. I just thought he was kind of miscast there. But then again, there was plenty of other good actors who were miscast there, like Alan Rickman as Ronald Reagan. What the hell was that about? So I don't think he's only as good as the movie, but I do think he is kind of one of those, he's navigated, he's basically always like being at a bar, just where he's having fun, and then there's other times where he just wants to, pay the tab and get out early. He's that kind of guy.
Yes.
That's kind of how it is with Hot Tub Time Machine, which is a very big cult comedy, but he's kind of got a mixed bag on whether or not he liked working with it or on it. But I will say for movie number 4, I gotta go with one of 2 different Woody Allen roles. I gotta go with Shadows and Fog, where he plays a brothel patron, and he's just the student, and he's just been all just kind of needy. He's like, I'll give you the world, I'll give you this amount of money, I'll up it. This is set in like the 40s or such, and it's just a fun once again, it's Woody Allen, so it's a colorful movie and everything. And a serial killer's plaguing the city, and and here he is, this hopeless nincompoop just trying to get laid, and he's really just makes this a wacky role here. And overall, it's just an interesting seeing him take on this kind of thing.
Yeah. I've never seen Shadows and Fog, and I'd honestly forgotten he was in it till you mentioned it.
We'll return after these messages.
Hey, feeling down? Feeling low? Not enough podcasts about movies in your life? Why not try
They must be destroyed on sight.
the new Podcast Cure-All? Sure to get you right with the world and on a path to better living. We have exploitation, we have Italian horror, we have zombies, we have slashers, we have crime films, we have spaghetti westerns, we even have sci-fi and sex comedies. So take a dose of
They must be destroyed on sight.
as needed, and let the hosts, Lee Russell, Daniel Harper, Paul Romali, and the odd guest host cure what ails you.
Warning, may cause atrophy, African consumption, black fever, bone shave, chin cough, colic, cramp colic, dropsy of the brain, elephantitis, grocer's itch, jaundice, mania, miasma, mortification, palsy, Pott's disease, rheumatism, scurvy, St. Anthony's fire, summer complaint, and worm fit in some people. Consult a physician before listening.
Hey, I heard you like movies.
I heard you like to hustle.
I heard you like podcasts.
Well, guess what?
There's a podcast for you out there called The Home Video Hustle.
Damn right.
Every Friday, we talk about whatever movie PJ picks out the bag. What does that mean? Every Wednesday on our YouTube page, I put a bunch of movies in a bag, and PJ picks one out at random. And then we just watch it. We talk about it for maybe like an hour, hour and a half, 2 hours, whatever we feel like doing, wherever the conversation leads us.
But do we actually talk about the movie?
Most of the time.
Ah,
Tangents galore.
yes.
So believe me, we may be a movie podcast, but it's not always about movies. We might talk about video games,
Music.
Yeah, that's the big one, music. Sometimes we might get a little bit of politicalness in there.
Yes.
Sometimes we may just, we know what we like to do. We like to tell stories, PJ.
Ah, yes.
I am the master storyteller
Yes.
of the podcast realm. Undefeated. So if you like to hear about movies, video games, whatever foolishness comes to our mind, the most random stuff you can think of, check out the Home Video Hustle. You can find us on the Stitchers,
Yes.
the Google Play,
Yes.
Apple Podcasts,
What else?
Podbean,
What else?
Podcast Addict,
Goddamn.
all that. Ain't no reason you can't get your hustle on. We everywhere, worldwide, baby.
Hustle, motherfucking hustle.
Hey, we can't cuss in the promo, PJ.
Ah,
We gotta be family friendly. There may be podcasts out there that don't want his hair say
ah, ah,
all
ah.
that good fun stuff.
Well, Fuck you.
Don't run the listeners away, Pete.
I'm sorry.
But this is going kind of long.
Yes.
So we'll end this and say, hey, check out the Home Video Hustle every Friday on all the various podcast outlets. Peace.
Peace.
As far back as I can remember, I always wanted to be a gangster. And while Witch didn't make it to the top of the world, he did make the Gangs of Hollywood podcast. So join the gang and enjoy a movie review podcast about movie gangs, gangsters, mobsters, and the mayhem they cause. You can find GOH Podcast on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at GOH Pod at www.gohpod.com, as well as your favorite podcast listening app. And remember, say hello to your little friend for me.
If you take two old punk rockers who are past their prime, put them in front of a movie screen, and give them a podcast, what do you get? Cinema Punks. Cinepunks. It's the mixtape of movies.
Did you ever see a film at such a young age it left you traumatized with cinematic wounds? Necrophilia. It's a dead issue, man. Don't push it. Cinema Psyops is a weekly podcast documenting an ongoing experiment on the mind of an unwilling test subject.
No one should have to watch this movie.
Oh, no one should have to watch this?
No one should have to watch this movie.
Surprisingly, it's not a topic that a lot of people really want to tackle.
I'm shocked, prudes.
I know, really.
Right?
It's the next sexual frontier that no one wants to explore.
I am, in the most sincerest of senses, disappointed in you.
It takes a powerful goddess like Connie, jam her arm down the monster's throat and kill it. Oh, I'm still tripping out over that. Even as a kid, I was like, I gotta find a girl like that. Every week, I get a new look of disappointment that I never thought I could get out of it.
Unimaginable. At 12 years old, you should not be watching this movie.
Obviously.
At 13, you should not be. 14, you shouldn't be. I'm not entirely sure even 17-year-olds should be watching this.
Just because you're offended by something doesn't mean that you have the right to demand that it doesn't exist. Watching this film again, I had all of this like little nerd glee with everything that kept
little
popping
history
up.
doll popping up
absolutely.
at you.
So I totally loved this film.
Hey, I know why you couldn't see that. It's because your brain's warped from watching this shit at 12 years old.
Yeah, this is a rough movie. I told you ahead of time when we were getting ready to do it that it was
How
going to be a
could you
rough
watch
one.
this shit at 12?
Because physical wounds heal, cinematic ones don't. Listen to Cinema Psyops.
Hey everybody, I'm Corey.
And I'm Zach, and we're the hosts of Podcasting After Dark, a cast dedicated to late-night horror and sci-fi of the 80s and 90s, often found on HBO and Cinemax.
You know, the movies your parents didn't want you watching as a kid. You can find us every other week on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podbean, and Stitcher.
This is what you want.
This is what you get.
It's time, let's check our cue, baby. Pair it with a couple brews, baby. We love good movies. We love the bad ones too. So we watch them all and pass their lessons on to you. Oh yeah. Everything I learned from movies helps to make life a little bit groovy. Whether one likes plot holes or gratuitous movies, it's time to get busy with your friend Steve and Izzy at eilfm.podbean.com.
Welcome to Who Was She podcast. I am your host, Tara Jabari. After a decade working in documentaries, marketing, and all things digital media, I found that podcasting is a strong medium to share stories. After years of producing for others, I decided to start my own biographical podcast. Who Was She will focus on the life of a woman throughout Baha'i history. The first season is about Lydia Zamenhof. Lydia's story explores the subjects of the power of language and faith. Her father invented the universal language Esperanto, and she came from a Jewish family and became a Baha'i. She grew up during World War I and was killed during World War II in a concentration camp, despite heroic efforts to save her life. How can one person's life intersect with so many others, connect across borders, and inspire a biography, which inspired this podcast? Over the next few weeks, I will share her story with you and the lives that were most affected by her and those who affected her life as well. They include her father, Ludwig Zamenhof, her spiritual mother, American journalist Martha Root, and the Baha'i German soldier Fritz Mako, who worked for the resistance undercover while having to serve the Nazi Party. I want to thank the author Wendy Heller and George Ronald Publishing for their blessing to let me use Heller's biography, Lydia, The Life of Lydia Zamenhof, Daughter of Esperanto, as a main and instrumental resource for this podcast. So please subscribe and learn about this amazing woman who traveled through 3 continents in an effort to bring unity through the power of language. You can also find more information on our Instagram, Facebook, and Pinterest at Who Was She Podcast. Music was composed and performed by Sam Red. I am your host, Tara Jabari. Join us next time as we begin our journey about Lydia Zamenhof.
Hi, everybody. It's Mac Jackson. I wanted to invite you to a new site called the Forever Adventure Network. This website has everything: pictures, videos, blogs. There's original music by Harmony Constant, 2 podcasts. One is the MacGyver podcast, where we celebrate Richard Dean Anderson, his iconic roles, and how it's influenced our lives. There's episode discussions, interviews, and life conversations. The second podcast is the Never Gets Old podcast, where we celebrate all the best things that we love in life, from TV, movies, music, and comics. The site is also the home for the MacGyver SG-1 audio series, an ongoing adventure series that continues the adventures of MacGyver and SG-1. There are also multiple stores to choose from for all of your pop culture and adventure needs. Come on by and check us out today. And thanks for joining the adventure.
Are you sick of the same old stale podcasts? Well, then join Vanessa and Darren as they dissect movies of all kinds. The 2 lifelong cinema lovers bring their favorites, curiosities, and first-time watches to the operating table and inject them with a healthy dose of snark. Then there's the waiting room, where they examine books and short stories. So just look for them on Apple Podcasts and where fine podcasts are available. They're part of the Legion Podcast Network. Follow them on Twitter at VDClinicPod. Join them on Facebook at facebook.com/groups/VDClinicPod. Or email them at vdclinicpod@gmail.com. They're ready to cure what ails you. And still, they just might be a little contagious.
We now continue with our program.
Was Shadows and Fog done in black and white?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And
I didn't see it.
I can't recommend it more. The all-star cast as a whole is just fabulous. John Malkovich, Mia Farrow, of course, and and just a bunch of others who are even Madonna. It's just a very unusual, yet well put together, just atypical kind of movie. Lily Tomlin's in there. It's just
Wow.
Riley. It's
Oh my gosh.
yeah, from early '90s, and moving on to number 5. Do you want to go or should I?
Yeah, I'm gonna well, this was tough for me. I'm gonna say a movie that I really love watching. It has not aged well. I saw it in the theaters and now it looks kind of cheap. But I think it's a great movie, and it's called Identity.
Nice, yeah.
It has a really it's a thriller, but
The
it's
Usual Suspects type movie.
absolutely, it has a turn at the end that's surprising, and it's very well cast. It's got a stacked cast. I mean, it's a mid 2000s film. So you've got Amanda Peet, you've got Clea Duvall, you've got Jake Busey, you've got a lot of people that were getting
Dr. Cox.
Absolutely, that were getting a lot of work. Ray Liotta's in this film, and it's an old school. If you're familiar with the type of movie or play that was considered a parlor play, meaning most of the action takes place in one environment. Most of the action in this film takes place on a rainy night in a desert motel, and it's a very, very intimate set, meaning you only see like 4 or 5 rooms, and the characters are all structured so they're all connected in some way, and slowly as the movie reveals, you get to see how they're connected. By the way, none of it is predictable. When I saw this movie, I was expecting it to be very predictable, but his performance, yet again, is that of kind of the straight man observing and demonstrating curiosity around what's happening around him. He literally plays kind of a gumshoe detective, and
right.
I really think he's one of the most compelling figures in this film. They're all compelling. I mean, you got a lot of scene chewers in this movie. So, don't get it twisted. You're not going to be bored looking at anybody. One of my favorite actors in this movie is a guy, he's a character actor. His name's Pruitt Taylor Vince.
Exactly. Yeah, he is very atypical even here. This is years before he was on shows like Justified, being typecast as the Southern kind of, trash head.
He is an excellent, excellent character actor. And he's also tight with the director, James Mangold, who directed him in a movie that literally I think only me and like a bunch of other 15-year-old girls in the 90s saw, called Heavy with Liv Tyler. Have you ever seen that film, Cam?
I have meant to see it. I have not yet. But
yeah, he's in that. That's how I know who he is. But anyway,
yeah.
John Cusack in this film is super compelling. It's a fun movie. It's a popcorn movie. Like, you want to sit with like you could probably watch this film at like 13 or 14 and really enjoy it. It's a great movie. It's a great movie for like a snowy winter night.
Absolutely. And fortunately, not as many had seen it, so there hasn't been a chance for anyone to wreck it, like wreck the ending. And it's really not relying on that. And I think that's what makes it work best. And overall, I mean, you could have done worse. And ironically, Mangold's kind of gone to more predictable standards in recent time, but he's gone away with it because it's been, superhero movies or just other simple crowd pleasers. But that's also why this movie works best, because it is a simple crowd pleaser. It's like, hey, for those who grew up with all the 80s and 90s, subgenre of serial killer movies and whodunits that, had all-star casts, and if there were plot holes, you still gave them a chance if the whole premise was easy to buy into. And this is one of those where it's like there's a serial killer on trial, you don't know what it has to do with the rest of these strangers at a hotel, and then before you can say Hitchcock, that kind of terror starts striking. totally good pick. It was going to be on this list eventually anyway, so I'm glad you brought that one up. Number 6, I got to go with a more obscure movie called The Contract.
Huh.
This is, he's done plenty of movies for New Image, Millennium Films, Lionsgate, and this is one of those many. And this one, don't let the fact that it was passed over by a festival, festivals in the home video market deter you. Business is whatever. Long story short, Cusack plays everyday kind of family man and a teacher on vacation hiking in the woods with his kids when none other than assassin Morgan Freeman is on the run, and he must help this unlikely ally from his various former employees trying to kill him. It's just a delight seeing Cusack and Freeman play off of each other. The movie as a whole is very similar to all these various, Born Identity, political assassin thrillers, and directed by none other than Bruce Beresford, who previously, worked with Freeman on, Driving Miss Daisy. So it's a very atypical kind of movie, but I was definitely sold on the chemistry between these two. And, again, Cusack just dives into the whole, everyday man who at least knows how to hunt.
Yeah.
Working with a professional, black ops type hunter who has just survived a car crash and has to figure out why his, former co-workers are trying to kill him, after masterfully killing a bunch of other political opposition for these, off the radar, dirty deeds type people. I can't recommend it enough. So I guess that's
good. I have never even heard of The Contract, and it sounds like it was out for like a flash, like released at a festival and did like a medium opening, like not even a medium opening, an unpromoted opening.
Yeah, unfortunately that's the case with these, and this was distributed by Sony, and it was just one of those, it just didn't get picked up at any festivals, so the only alternative was released to the home video market. But
Straight
it was
to streaming of like vintage straight to streaming.
Oh yeah, it was in 2006, and so that's definitely when that market just starts picking up, and then we're just like, everyone's like, yeah, hey, it was pretty good for a direct-to-video movie, and
Yeah.
so
I'm gonna do
number 7. Yeah.
number 7. I'm gonna do Grace is Gone.
Yes.
Which,
oh man,
what's funny is people sleep on this movie. They forget about
it.
It
Right?
was super hot again in the mid 2000s when his career was. I mean, he was just cranking out. I don't think he stopped working for like 10 years. Grace is Gone is another great movie where he plays. Well, this is the most straight non-John Cusack I've ever seen him be. So if one of your critiques of John Cusack, and this is a fair critique, is I'm just watching John Cusack move from kooky situation to kooky situation. This is a movie that is going to change your mind about his capacity, and I wish that he would do more films like this, because he really subverts his own personality into this role, and it's 100% convincing. It's extremely subtle. It's not a knee slapper. It's not a laugh out loud funny movie at all. It's not funny in any way. You're seeing a man process through grief for an extended period of time. But
I think the marketing really screwed this up. Yeah, because a lot of people, I think, get this one mixed up with the other movie of the same year, Martian Child. And that one is way more kind of just silly slapstick, a little cutesy. And this one is very, it's kind of a subtle war movie. It just, how would you feel if we've seen, the father serve and either be killed on or off screen, and, the mother have to tell the kids. We've rarely seen it be the other gender reverse. And then, and he's very atypical. This has a lot of quieter moments that really, nowadays when you see kind of an artsy kind of movie, it divides the audience on whether or not it was worth all the awards hype. And this one, he all of a sudden is like, kids, get dressed. We're leaving. You know, I gotta
Yes.
figure this out. And there's many moments where he's just got to himself. And he's just walking through the garden. And then he'll just look up and just glance at him. And even if it's him playing to the camera, it really works for this kind of movie because it's allowing him to just kind of gather his thoughts and get closer as a father and just as the current caretaker to these, you know, two daughters who this is beyond them, is like to think, oh, mom, she's not coming home, you know.
Well, a lot of this movie is done in silence.
Yeah.
That's the sign to me of somebody who wants to try something new in their career. Some of the things about John Cusack that might be offensive to people or annoying is that he's a talker and he picks dialogue-heavy films. So it's like, if you're going to watch High Fidelity, I mean, you better be ready for like not quite Aaron Sorkin level, Amy Sherman Palladino amounts of dialogue, but pretty close.
I'm surprised he hasn't worked with Sorkin.
I mean, for real, I'm surprised. I think he would have been great on The West Wing. And he would have been great in the most recent film about the Chicago 8, but we won't go there. This movie is the opposite of that. It's very silent. It's extremely reserved. It's very similar to The Descendants. Like when George Clooney chose to do The Descendants, it was a marked departure for him. He was like not playing the action hero or like the lovely leading man. And this is an example of John Cusack's version of that predates that film, but it is somewhat similar in theme and tone and approach. I really like him in this movie. I wish more people would see it. Again, I mean, think about it, Cam, like that time of film history, like 2002, you hinted at this earlier, but 2002 to like 2012, there were so many movies that came out. And I think smaller houses were just pumping out content. Festivals became more popular.
The market was changing.
Yeah,
again.
the market was totally changing.
We thought it was kind of getting to a standstill again because, you know, VHS was gone. So that market wasn't exploding anymore. And it was still... There were more and more new companies just popping up. Some of them would only last half a year. And you were just like, oh, so there is other competition. There is other ways for people to get their movie distributed with some semi-famous people chiming in, being a co-producer or heavily advertised actor. And again, forgive me, viewers, there's still plenty of stuff he's done that I have not seen yet. It's been on my watch list, but I just have not been able to come by it. I think that's just one of the many ultimate picks. Going with a movie that came out recently, you know, he has done some unusual stuff, you know, a lot of stuff that's even similar in some ways, like both Grand Piano and Blood Money have been kind of compared to stuff like Phone Booth or Buried. But one that actually sat very well, that I think will sit well with many people, is this one movie that was released by IFC Films called Adult World. And it's just a bunch of poets and other quirky, bizarre people all living together. That's literally the movie. And Cusack just plays this other writer that the other characters want to be like, and he really plays very well off, you know, the whole cast of people, you know, that includes Cloris Leachman, Emma Roberts.
I've seen this movie. It's been a
minute.
You have?
Oh,
I
really?
have. Yeah.
Okay, nice. I'll let you take it away. There's some sleaze, you know, hinted at, but it's never shown, and I like that. This is kind of just, there's a bunch of people even being drunk, but it's not heavily even talked about, you know, alcohol. It's just kind of just showing people embracing adult life and actually kind of wanting to do something with their disorganized, you know, existence. And
yeah, I saw this film and I think I thought it was going to be kind of like, what is that movie that's based on a graphic novel, Ghost World?
Oh, okay.
So I thought it would kind of be like coming of age, but in a dark environment. And that's exactly what it is. if you are a huge fan, and I really am not, I can't stand Ryan Murphy. We won't talk about that today, Cam, but I
No,
can't.
no,
stand him.
I hear you. Other than the recent 911 Lone Star show, I can't stand a lot of his stuff because
You really like Liv Tyler.
well, there's that, there's the Rob Lowe effect, but it's also
Yeah,
it's a well done show, and that says a lot because the previous 911, despite anchoring Angela Bassett, was very unorganized, very trashy, and I was just like, go back to watching the Chicago shows. At least you'll get everybody happy there, you know. And
well, and Angela Bassett, she gets with the guy who I really. Anyway, we won't get into this. But in adult world, you've got Emma Roberts. You've got Emma Roberts working in an adult video store.
Yeah.
And, she's
and
kind
they
of
don't
like
show anything.
No, they show nothing. It's the
Thank
most
God.
tame adult store you've ever seen. Like no neon lights, no toys out in the open. I mean, it's kind of vintage looking.
This is a very, very private rural
It
town.
is.
And I think Cusack just works well in this because he does get the most amusing lines to say in the movie. He's being the guidance guy, and he doesn't. All his advice isn't necessarily the wisest. So
it's kind of like a group of well, and Evan Peters is in it too, and Emma Roberts and Evan Peters. You see them a lot in the Ryan Murphy series. Oh my gosh,
American Horror Story.
Yes, so they're in
I haven't
American
seen it.
Horror Story together like 4 seasons in a row. But John Cusack plays an author that Emma Roberts really respects and kind of looks up to, and he's kind of like let me tell you the real reality about the world kid kind of character. But again, I'm willing to sit through a film with John Cusack trying to, patronize and give really bad advice to a 20-something girl. Like I'll watch that. I'll watch that film, and I have watched that film. It's called Adult World.
Sorry. It's called the what? Sorry.
Adult World.
Oh.
I mean, you know what I mean? That's the
Yeah,
premise of the film, is you really
Right.
get to see him become, he's gone from being the ne'er-do-well kid to advising the ne'er-do-well kid. It's kind of
For sure.
interesting.
I could not say it better. To become a mentor who shouldn't even be a mentor, that's kind of the movie is kind of like Gross, where it works as just a very twisted kind of movie. It's only R just for off-color language, but it's not risque beyond all belief to where you're like, okay, these people are in their own little world. But so looking back at his whole filmography, I mean, my sister used to see part of the movie One Crazy Summer when it came on one of the movie channels, and there's been a bunch of other ones that he's done, but one that comes on a lot of the Showtime networks that I think should actually be seen because it's an interesting, slow-paced war drama that's not about the war, just showing the time in Germany, is the 2002 fictional history drama called Max, where Cusack plays this Jewish art dealer, the title character, who comes across an Austrian painter known only as Hitler.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And one of many movies he's worked on with Minnow Jays, whose filmography includes The Color Purple and Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade and The Siege with Denzel. This movie, I think, did a really good job of just showing you how anybody, we've always known that and Hitler didn't just become evil overnight. What was it that just made him just kind of start hating people? Now, this one doesn't reflect so much on him. It's just about this Jewish painter who feels like some of his students he can't connect with. And there's some other lesser known actors who get to be in this. And for a 2002, that was already oversaturated with so many, historical epics and everything. And this one, I think, flew over the radar despite getting all the festival attention, and I would just recommend it for just kind of the very subdued yet undercurrent of just again the character study of how does one just feel, in control of their world, especially, when at this time when Germany, is already in upheaval.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah,
I've never seen Max. Does he play an American character, or does he try to pull off an accent?
He kind of plays it more like kind of subtly.
Yeah, I get it.
But everybody pretty much in this one, they kind of get away with it because they're basically all speaking English.
Yes.
So they kind of go Valkyrie on you, but even though the accent isn't there, kind of I think he is Jewish in real life, so he blends into it pretty well at just by, you can buy him as an art teacher. So, I mean, an art dealer. And
well, there's somebody in that film that I really like. Molly Parker's in it, and I think Molly Parker is completely underrated, undercast. I think she's so brilliant.
And he plays well off of her, and this says a lot too, because he's not necessarily the most I wouldn't say bright, but he's not someone who you look upon as liking, because he's also got a mistress in this movie, but it's also, he's one of those where basically he kind of feels helpless, so he's just kind of just watching the world burn, so to speak. He's and he's wondering where this man with all his racist viewpoints, where's this coming from?
Trying to think, I'm trying to think of a nice segue from Max, which is like kind of I mean, it's not obscure, but I think it was such a marked departure from what people were used to seeing from him that it was really, I mean, when was Max made? 2002?
Yeah, so probably 01, I guess it was made, and then it was released in the middle of the festival circuits in Sundance, blowing up again. So
we're going to talk about a pot boiler next, if that's okay with you. Are we on number 9?
I think we just did 10, but at this point, let's do some other honorable mentions. Just some other roles that just.
Yeah. So this is it's a pot boiler, but I'm going to try to sell you on it. Are you ready? I'm going to try to sell what it is. I'm going to try to sell you Serendipity. I'm going to try to sell you this movie. And it is complete schlock. It is totally a romantic comedy, fantasy. There is nothing realistic about this film whatsoever. It's borderline fairy tale, but it's funny. It's well crafted. It's perfect for holiday watching, and it's just like comfort food. It is the easiest watch in the world. There is nothing that's going to annoy you about this movie. There is nothing you might get bored. That's probably the only thing that's going to happen. But it's a really funny movie. It's a warm movie. I am not a fan of Kate Beckinsale. The only reason she's watchable is because he is opposite of her. He provides her some texture, and he is a textured person, and they allowed him to kind of keep some of his texture in this film. This is also another movie with Jeremy Piven in it where they play friends. So I got to pour one out for my old former homies that they're just not homies anymore. But it's a nice watch. It's got a really nice, easy listening soundtrack. It's a great movie to watch with your mom. Great movie. To watch with your mom.
Yeah. So long story short, I had family who wanted to watch this movie, and I would always find a way to not watch it with them. And then eventually it came on cable one day, and it was just one of those.
I went to film school. I'm not going to sit here and watch this romantic comedy that's played on airplanes. Hilarious.
Yeah, and I always got it mixed up with that other just over the top movie, Kate and Leopold, from the same year. So I was just like, yeah, whatever. Okay. Popular date movie. Don't know if that's good or bad, but yeah, I'm not a Kate fan either, and I know everyone just saw like, oh, Cameron, I love Underworld. And I'm just like, yeah, no, I don't. I only do vampires if they're like the guys in Near Dark, Lost Boys, or Blade. I don't do all that fancy gothic-y stuff. But
The Lost Boys, that's another great soundtrack film. But yeah, serendipity, it's nice, warm comfort food if you are spending any time with an older female who doesn't want to watch anything with any nudity or any adult time. This is a nice, I mean, if it were put out today, they'd put it out on Lifetime. It probably does show on Lifetime, come to think of it.
Oh,
They
I'm
probably
sure it
have the
does.
rights for it.
It has to. And I mean, more or less, I think this is where he does a good mix of crowd pleasers and, this is early 2000s, so he's making transition. One that I don't think gets mentioned enough that I actually do feel like he anchors pretty well. He's already done all-star cast movies like Primary Colors and 8 Men Out, but I'm going to give a really huge honorable mention to Runaway Jury.
Oh, yes.
Where he has the, John Grisham was a big deal, still is, but not as many of his works have been adapted. But, I felt like this was up there. I haven't read the book. Sorry, guys. I don't know how true it is. I'm told it takes license, but a lot of people were kind of easily pleased. I rank this still up there easily with A Time to Kill and The Client because, he's got to play off of, everybody in this. Bit part actors, bigger actors, and people like Nestor Serrano, Gene Hackman, and it's there's plenty more. I'll name them eventually, but yeah, this movie, I'm surprised it doesn't even get aired on the cable channels even as much because I mean, this is a big cast. This isn't it's not just any kind of movie. You have Justin Hoffman, Rachel Weisz, and so it's like this. This does a good job of just showing you the jury pool table and how there could be occasional foul play. Predictably, otherwise there's no movie. And yes, Piven is in this, but it's interesting seeing a lot of people stretch outside their typical thing. You have Cliff Curtis, Leland Orser, Jennifer Bills, even freaking Bill Noon and Bruce Davison, and even Bruce McGill as the judge. And so it's like, okay, it's cool seeing all these actors act outside their comfort zone. There's plenty of other character actors who've been in everything who are here, but
the only thing the movie is missing is Margot Martindale. Everyone else is in that film. I mean, it is fantastic. And another good thing, it's fantastic. It's not deep. It's not a deep film. I mean, that's why people like John Grisham, right? But
I think A Time to Kill is a little deeper, but yeah, this one, it's not, other than the premise, it's just all about the frills.
Yes.
And seeing if the actors can,
do it all.
chew it off. But yeah.
But the background, the fact that it was filmed in New Orleans, and if you have ever been to New Orleans, you can, it's a great movie in that you see them moving through the city and it's extremely convincing and it adds a little dose of like gritty reality to the movie. But he is really good in this. Again, plays the straight man who's kind of well, I'm not going to reveal like the turn on this, but he is doing more pushing and pulling and manipulating than you would expect in the beginning. But he definitely plays that role like just an everyman. And an everyman with a secret, I guess. And I think that is where he really shines. I wish we would see him in more. I mean, I don't want to say I want him to do more popcorn films or more wide releases because the industry just doesn't look the way it did. But I like to see him.
I think he's getting better now, but he definitely did have a few moments where it's like, oh, okay, come on, dude, you're better than that. So I think he has definitely, I don't know if he's switched agents, but I'm sure he's definitely gotten to the point where he's like, all right, guys, no more of this shit. Don't even let this script land on my desk. I need, very diverse comedy, and I need just some character study, just like Ethan Hawke. I can have the forgettable period piece drama, but I want to have, the notable, character study at least,
He'd be really good on like an HBO Max project, like something that's really.
I think he does have something in production with them, believe it or not.
I hope so.
I could be wrong, but I think he did say that he was negotiating some kind of deal.
Because that to me, that's where he could get a niche audience again. I think he would get, like, if he were to do the right type of niche project, he could get a group of rabid fans who were like, oh, I love, like, the people that are like, I mean, like Westworld stans or like West Wing stans, like those people, they will come out for whatever you do if you do that first initial like hook project well. I'd like to see him do stuff on stage. I wonder the last time he did a great stage play. I should have Googled that before we talked
I
today.
couldn't find anything on his stage stuff, but I think I do vaguely recall hearing that. So I think, yeah, he could, when COVID hopefully gets resolved, I think he could definitely figure out. I don't think he'd get a Tony, but I think he could definitely be in some Hamilton-worthy play, and
yes,
he could probably even, like you say, HBO Max. He could definitely, he doesn't have to do a sequel to something like Say Anything or anything. He could literally just be in some kind of quirky movie, and he could, invite some of his collaborators he's worked with before. I'm actually surprised he hasn't been in some of the nuttier comedies of the 2000s that everyone quotes. Is Will Ferrell or Kevin Hart listening? I don't know.
Yes.
So I think that's just it. He used to have the looks, and now he just kind of has just the appropriateness nature for these kind of roles that he takes on now. So now, and because he's done so many different types of movies that are independent, everyone kind of has to make a little extra effort to find some of his stuff, but you can still easily find him in at least 10 other mainstream movies that were a big deal at one point. So I think he's was partially in the cracks at one point, but he's getting out of there again because he's just always again being unpredictable. So I think that's why he really has an audience. You don't know what to expect from him.
Well, the fact that this is going to sound strange, but I think about how Kevin Spacey has had a very like similar before the Me Too issues.
I know what you
realized
mean.
he was trash. He had a very similar trajectory and was trying a bunch of different things. He was trying. I mean, if you've seen John Cusack in like a True Colors with James Spader, back when James Spader was still a heartthrob and hadn't transitioned into like an older character actor. That film is I think a great precursor to like a House of Cards type of movie or type of show. And I think about Kevin Spacey has now been shuffled off to Buffalo. We'll never hear from him in a major name project again, I don't think.
No.
And so John Cusack should just be scooping up those Spacey projects. I mean, he would have been great in Baby Driver. He would have been great in that movie.
Yeah, I could have seen him in something like that. And yes, I apologize, guys. I accidentally said Primary Colors. I meant True Colors, but I
knew what you meant.
He should totally be getting some of these zany roles that Travolta turned down, or the Spacey type politicians, or even he shouldn't play historical figures. That's not where we're suggesting, because again, anyone who's seen The Butler, that was a big, just bizarrely casted movie with its heart in the right place. But he should be doing just kind of. I'm surprised he hasn't played a sailor or just kind of been in something wacky with Ben Stiller or something like that. It's just that kind of. He's kind of taken on different identities, and now he's got to find out what his real identity is and show that on screen, I think, or not.
Well, and one of the things that we don't know, I mean, I don't know a lot about John Cusack's personal life. I mean, no one really knows the real reason why him and Jeremy Piven aren't friends anymore. He's never really given us, I mean, he's doing those live shows, or has done those live shows to talk about Say Anything, which we didn't even talk about today, but that's cool. I'll get you on another. We'll find
for sure
to talk about mainly Taylor or somebody like that.
To be fair, he worked well for that movie, but I think back in that time, anyone could have worked well in that movie.
Yes.
And
well, you got Cameron Crowe's writing to back you up, so you're gonna be all right in a film like that.
And who was he playing off of that? That was not Annabella Scola. It was
Eye in the Sky.
Yeah, Eye in the Sky. Yeah, and
Before she married the Beastie Boy. Yeah, when she was just a 90s it girl.
yeah, and another example of someone who's been in everything from Private Practice, Arrested Development, River's Edge, Gas Food Lodging I just saw recently, and then Wayne's World. So there you go.
Yes.
And, she's really good in One Night Stand with Wesley Snipes, but that's a perfect example of someone who has taken on different types of roles and always been unpredictable. I think he's going to continue doing stuff like that, and I hope he just finds one that kind of just knocks him dead eventually, just gets even bigger. So
yeah, this was good, man. I'm really glad we did this. I haven't thought this long and hard about John Cusack in a minute. I really do. I think he has so much. I think he's really captivating, and I think it's really interesting that he's kind of a person who is a character actor, and you might forget that because people are like, he's just playing himself. Well, I think to play facets of your own personality is a kind of character portrayal. Like you get that with Patricia Clarkson.
That's a good parallel. Yeah, someone who is charming and has to again get charming roles.
Always her. You always get Patty Clarkson. You're never going to get somebody that is complete. You're never going to be like, who is that? Oh, that's Patricia Clarkson. What a shocker. And that's okay. I think when you pick material that's interesting and compelling to you and you really dial into it, like he does when he's interested in something, like High Fidelity, the movie you referenced is a great example of that. He decided that was going to be a project that he cared about, and it shows. So he took something that could have been just another, kind of lighthearted book to movie adaptation and turned it into something really uniquely him. And I just wish he'd do more of that.
Yeah, I can only hope so. And so I think we'll just leave it on that point. I mean, What does the future hold? Is he going to take these kind of wackier roles, or is he going to do more of these subdued, serious roles? Or is he just going to keep being unpredictable? I don't know. But it's kind of a trademark in and of itself. So, Cori, thank you so much for being on here. Where can we find you on the interwebs?
Oh gosh, most of my handles are my name. So I don't really talk about film, but it's Cori Wallace on Twitter. That's probably the easiest to find me. Yeah.
Great. So on social media, do you just kind of just?
I mean, what do I talk about? I talk about a lot of political stuff. So if you don't want to, I will of course boost this podcast on Instagram, and on Instagram I'm She's a DG. So it's SHESADG.
Okay.
All right, that's my dog barking in the background.
He wants to get political. No, nothing wrong with being political. I mean, we need more young Turks out there. So, other than that, I'll check those out.
Awesome. Cam, anytime you want to do this, we can always talk.
By all means, you reached out, and when I was in one of those groups, I was like, I need some more hosts,
I'm always here to talk about things. Love it.
It's amazing how it has to all be done in advance. There's always something that comes up. I literally on my days off for a while, I was recording like 3 episodes a day. It was insane.
Oh my gosh.
It's awesome. Easier to do it ahead of time, so you just can edit it and all that. But
have things on the hopper.
Instead of just, oh, sorry, man, September was looking great 2 months ago. And I had some other pals who wanted to be on here, but I just said, no, you're not going to contribute to the conversation, though. So
Well, I'm
Nothing
glad
against-
I could be a guest. I really appreciate it. And I like the format. I think it's cool to just go through people's filmography and really like dive into why their career worked or why they didn't.
I'll definitely try and get you for even one of these future franchise talks.
Oh.
And I know those aren't easy too, because we gotta basically dissect someone's career.
Yes. I'm always down for a little dissection. Thank you so much, Cam.
Likewise, thank you for being on here.
Yeah, of course. We'll talk soon. Bye.
All right, hasta luego.
Follow us on the web on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. The podcast is available on Podbean, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Anchor, Apple, and anywhere else podcasts are available. Feel free to review our show and leave comments on any of those sites. Thanks a million for listening.
It's a jacked up